My name's Kevin Burke, and here are 8 myths about foreign aid. Myth number 1. There's a magic bullet that will lift poor people out of poverty. Economists and donors have spent a lot of time searching for the one instrument that's going to lift poor people out of poverty. It's not likely that one exists. Here are some examples of false cures. In the 1960s, we thought that we had to fill the gap between the country's savings rate and a necessary amount of investment. That was a mistake because countries had an incentive to save less. Then we thought that providing primary education for everyone would lift people out of poverty. Now, we have almost universal primary education around the globe, but it's had virtually zero effect on poverty. Then we thought that poor people were having too many kids, dividing their economy's resources too many ways. It turns out that people everywhere are having just as many kids as they want to. Then we tried to withhold aid unless a country made certain reforms that would help growth. But Western governments weren't happy allocating money for foreign aid that wasn't being spent, so they often gave the money to poor countries anyway. Now people are saying microfinance is going to give people the loan they need to get out of poverty. There's no doubt that microfinance is helping, but it's not true that people need one big loan to get out of poverty. Most people borrow or lend small amounts throughout the year to meet their cash flow needs. To sum up, poverty is complicated, and there's no single thing that's going to help solve the problem. Myth number 2. More money is always better. Many people believe that if only we could get rich countries and donors to send more money, then we would be able to do some meaningful work. There are some problems with this theory though. Number 1, for 50 years, we've been giving aid to poor countries, and we haven't been able to measure any meaningful effect of aid on growth. Spending more money in the same ways is not likely to make a difference. Money is often spent poorly. Aid money is spent hiring inexperienced consultants, siphoned off through corruption, or wasted purchasing useless or ineffective items. With a bad project design, or without taking care of the details, more money will simply be spent ineffectively. For example, in Indonesia, the government held anti-corruption meetings. When the head of the village got to hand out meeting invitations, there was zero effect on corruption. But when the invitations were handed out to school children to give to their parents, corruption was reduced by 1/3. That's the sort of detail that spending more money is not going to fix. We need to get the details right before we start scaling up programs. Myth number 3. Charities with low overhead are better than charities with high overhead. Donors think that they're wasting money if they donate to a charity with high overhead. It's actually far more likely that they're wasting it on the low overhead charity. Low overhead encourages skimping on all forms of administration, including hiring and paying for qualified staff. Because they're worried about overhead, charities often don't evaluate their programs to see where money is being spent effectively and where it's being wasted. Without feedback, they'll waste far more money on programs than on administration. Low overhead also leads charities to favor high-cost programs over cheaper ones that are as effective, so that their cost ratio looks better. If you're worried about wasted money, be more wary of unhelpful programs than bureaucratic spending. Overhead is not a good way to evaluate charities. Myth number 4. Earmarking money for sexy projects helps. After the tsunami in Thailand in 2005, everyone wanted to give money for orphanages to house parentless children and boats for fishermen. More money was spent for these causes than was actually necessary. Orphanages has had trouble finding enough orphans to house, and some families actually abandoned their children at orphanages because they couldn't afford to feed their children. Because donors allocated too much money for boats, NGOs also built more boats than fishermen actually lost during the tsunami, leading to overfishing and waste. There are plenty of other examples of sexy project overfunding. More money being spent for AIDS relief than on basic medical care in Africa, or money for starving children rather than on programs that would help them avoid starvation in the first place. There's a whole lot of boring work that goes on in aid, like helping people fill out government forms to start their own businesses. Beware of projects and causes that sound innately sexy. Myth number 5. Gifts in kind are useful donations. The only people who know what an area actually needs are the people on the ground in that area. Most gifts in kind may not be appropriate for the season or the culture. For example, warm clothes for Haiti, expired medicines, or shoes. After disasters, when logistics are difficult, gifts in kind can clog up ports and prevent more urgent shipments from getting through. Someone also has to go through all the gifts and sort the useful ones from the non-useful ones. Sending gifts in kind can destroy local markets. For example, someone who made or sold shoes in Haiti would not be able to compete against free shoes from abroad. Maybe you're concerned that if you give cash, the aid agency won't spend it effectively. But if you don't trust the agency with your cash, then why are you willing to give them your donated goods? And they might simply decide to sell whatever goods you've sent along and buy more useful ones. Unless you've spoken to someone in the region and they've specifically requested gifts in kind, it's better to give cash. Myth number 6, brain drain is a bad thing. Some people worry that poor countries waste money training workers who plan to emigrate, or that when skilled workers leave a poor country, they leave that country worse off. These assumptions are false. Wages in the West for skilled workers are often 10 or 20 times as high as they are in the home country. These high wages give workers an incentive to invest in their education, which they wouldn't have if they couldn't migrate. Earning a higher wage allows skilled workers to send more money home than they could ever make if they hadn't left. Workers retain close ties to the nation of their birth, and many move back home or assume leadership roles in their home countries later on. For example, 46 current heads of national government received their education in the United States. Also, from a human rights point of view, people everywhere have a right to freedom of movement. Allowing skilled workers to migrate to rich countries is not stealing. More migration encourages more people in the home country to develop skills in the first place. Myth number 7, foreign aid is the best way to help poor countries. After 50 years, we don't know that foreign aid has helped that much. We do know 2 things that have made poor countries better off: free trade and immigration. Free trade makes U.S. consumers better off because the increased competition lowers prices. It also gives producers in poor countries access to markets around the world and lets them compete with richer producers in the United States. Free trade's effect on unemployment in the United States is mostly short-term and must be compared with the benefits to producers in poor countries and to consumers around the world. Right now, the economy of Haiti is in shambles. The best way to help Haitians is to allow them to immigrate to the United States, where they could find jobs and send money home to people who choose to remain in Haiti. That will help the Haitian people much more than billions of dollars in development and foreign aid money. Myth number 8, we know better than the locals. A lot of Westerners assume that because we're wealthier and because we have fancy educations, that we know better than the people we're trying to help. And if only we could teach them, if only they would listen to us, they could escape their desperate situations. This isn't true. If it was easy for people to escape poverty, they would have done so a long time ago. It's extremely difficult to make things any better without an extensive knowledge of the local culture, the language, and the people who live there. The people who know best what to do are those closest to the affected areas. Our job should be to help them out. So be really careful about believing you can take a trip to India or Africa and change the world. Here are some ways we can do better. For one thing, be aware of the difference between showing that you care and actually care. Here are some ways we can do better. The most important thing is to be aware of the difference between showing that you care and actually caring. Many people give money or wish to go volunteer because they're interested in showing other people that they care about the poor. It's good to want to show other people that you care, but it's important to do it in a way that actually helps. If you're going to give money, give to organizations that have worked in an area for a long time and have staff on the ground. Because they have local knowledge, they're the ones with the best chance of making. Give cash. Cash is fungible and can be used to purchase the goods that will make the most difference. Only give to organizations that evaluate the effectiveness of their programs. If you are worried about money being wasted, it's more likely that charities are wasting money on bad programs than on high overhead. Avoid earmarking your donation for sexy programs like internet access, building houses, AIDS care, or orphanages. Earmarking means that these programs receive a disproportionately large amount of money instead of the boring essential work of aid, like helping people gain access to government programs. In many cases, it forces charities to provide more aid in that area than is actually needed. Most importantly, do some research for yourself, hold charities accountable, and spread the word about how to give money smarter. Thanks very much.